Good afternoon and welcome to the Drum's Micro-Influencer webinar in association with Curalate. I'm Natalie Mortimer, a reporter at the Drum, and I'm excited to introduce our experts today. With me, I have Brendan Lowry, Marketing Director at Curalate, and Emily Auchincloss, who's the Global Online Communications Manager at Farfetch. So let's get started. To give you a quick run through of the agenda for the next hour, I will firstly introduce our speakers. Then we'll get into what a micro-influencer is and why they're different from traditional influencers. Next, we'll dive into 7 different ways that brands can create successful micro-influencer campaigns. And finally, we want to hear your thoughts. So we'll be taking questions during a Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please do send through your questions throughout. Also, don't forget to use the hashtag microinfluence throughout the webinar to ask questions, add your 2 cents, and more. And so on to our speakers. Emily is the Global Online Communications Manager at Farfetch, and she is based here in London. Farfetch is a revolutionary online shopping platform that partners with 400 of the world's best boutiques and brands. Brendan Lowry has been with Curalate since the early days, and he's got an audience of his own, capturing unique moments, people, and day-to-day life in Philadelphia and beyond. And finally, I'm Natalie. I'm a reporter at The Drum, and I write about fashion, design, luxury, and food and alcohol. Well, that's the introductions done, so I'm going to hand over to our moderator, Julia Hansen from Curalate, who will kick off the discussion.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us. So we at Curalate are really excited to be working with the Drum on this webinar. Here at Curalate we have a visual content platform that allows brands to connect their consumers to discovery at all points of purchase on social and beyond. So influencers are definitely top of mind for us right now. So I wanted to start off with this quote here from Scott Cook at Intuit. So a brand is no longer what we tell the consumer it is what consumers tell each other it is. So what this really means is that while traditional marketing was based on brands showing and telling customers who they were, influencer marketing has allowed us to fill this huge gap. So now other customers can spread the word about brands they love, and this is sort of the missing link for how we can really reach other consumers with authentic messaging. So what we find is that as the influencer network grows based on shares, downloads, likes, and comments, as does the reach of your content. So influencer marketing really allows for those authentic word-of-mouth recommendations that are mutually beneficial for both the influencer and the brand. So what I mean by that is when you look at the posts like this one in the middle, so this is sponsored content, and this blogger is reaching all of her audience with this gap posting. And when you are a consumer scrolling through, you're looking for recommendations from people like friends and family, people that appeal to you as, tastemakers and recommenders. So when you see this post, this is an authentic way of kind of sharing this product and allowing it to fit seamlessly into someone's feed. So in these cases, we're also seeing brands taking advantage of new ways to spread their influencer networks. So on the left here, we have a vertical video. So that's taking off, as many of you know. And in this situation, we've got a really authentic recommendation for this top, where a blogger kind of gives it this friendly, approachable caption, obsessed. That's something you'd see in a friend's feed again. So that authentic recommendation. And then finally on the right here we have an example of a brand that's giving tips that get their network talking. So that's another huge benefit to working with influencers, is that you're able to see not only influencers that tout the products that work for them, but also things like account takeovers, tips, and adding a lot of personality to your brand that might not have been there before. So what is a micro-influencer and why do we want to go micro? So to give you some background for those of you that don't know, micro-influencers are what we consider influencers that have 5,000 to 25,000 followers. So they typically see around a 3.5 engagement rate. That means comments, likes, asking about where they bought something, how a follower can get the same item. And what we've really seen with this is that micro-influence allows for a two-way street. So that means that micro-influencers want more influence and you want a larger audience. So when you're engaging with these people, you're really finding people that are giving their followers real recommendations, and they're engaging in buying conversations. So whereas big influencers will post a sponsored post and be done with it, micro-influencers are really engaging with their followers about why they like a product and why they would use it again and why another follower should also try it out. Or they're giving a more honest opinion, you know, this wasn't my favorite, I wouldn't use this. So that authentic voice again is what's really resonating here. And we have found that 82% of consumers are highly likely to follow the recommendation of a micro-influencer. So when you think about it, you know, if your friend texts you and says, hey, just tried that coffee place around the corner, I love it, you should go, that's a great recommendation for you. And so in a similar way, micro-influencers are offering these very personal opinions that are being picked up on by their followers. So speaking to that, what are the benefits of new influencer marketing? So in this case, we see an example of a micro-influencer versus a major influencer. For better or for worse, a lot of you are likely familiar with the lady on the right. And while she's got tons of followers, the smaller influencer is more engaged with users. So and is incorporating the brand in a natural way, and she's working the product into the rest of her posts. So her caption, your morning should always start colorful and maybe with a little bit of coffee. That's a fun post. You're seeing, you know, her watch, this fun background. Whereas this post from Kylie Jenner is using Fit Tea before my shoots is my favorite. You know, it's a little basic, it's a little predictable, but with this blogger and micro-influencer on the right, we actually see, or excuse me, on the left, we actually see a little bit more authenticity and working that into her gallery and her, you know, grid in a more approachable way. So there's such a thing as being too popular, and that's really what we see with the distinction here. Influencers with fewer followers actually have a higher rate of likes on their photos, and comment rate is similarly correlated. So that's huge for brands because you're looking for people who are really going to make a wave with their followers, and you want to be able to have that word of mouth top of mind. So micro-influencers are seen as more authentic and real because they're engaging with users on a regular basis. Another important point is that they're plugging products less. So they're not just, you know, on a scheduled weekly posting of something. A lot of us saw the Scott Disick debacle where he posted something that said, schedule for Tuesday, you know, and so with these micro-influencers, we actually get a really natural kind of incorporation of products and themes that aren't so in your face. So we want to dive in now and look at 7 ways to create successful micro-influencer campaigns. So we know that marketing and digital consumption are intertwined. So content creation and circulation has never been more important, and it's also competitive. So a lot of brands are looking at micro-influencers, they're finding ways to engage with them and connect with them and build these relationships. So how does your brand get ahead? How do you find a strategy that really incorporates your brand voice and allows you to work with people that are going to share it in the right way? So while users are curious about what brands are sharing, the numbers show us that word of mouth is even more crucial. These customers are following micro-influencers because they want real inspiration, which includes these recommendations, tips, and ideas. So without further ado, let's dive into 7 ways that you can create a successful micro-influencer campaign, and I will hand it over to my colleague Brendan so that we can get started.
So hey, thank you, Julia. Thanks for the intro and the transition. As mentioned earlier in the webinar, I'm a marketing director here at Curalate, where I'm really focused on helping brands really understand kind of this new world of digital and also influencer marketing. And in addition to that, I've been fortunate enough to grow a few different Instagram channels on my own personal channel. I have a photography account as well. So kind of combining the technology side of things with Curalate and then actually the influencer side of things with working on campaigns with brands like General Motors and Kimpton Hotels. I've been able to see kind of the best of both worlds, and it gives me a pretty unique vantage point into this whole kind of growth in the influencer space. And I think the last example that Julia went through is super interesting and ties in nicely with what we're going to discuss today, because the first point that I have here is that at the end of the day, this is really all about storytelling. And I think that when brands think about when they often think about influencer marketing, they think that it's simply about giving an influencer or a celebrity a product and hoping that celebrity posts about that product. And as we saw in Julia's previous example, both of those images tell very different stories. The one to the right is clearly an advertisement, where the one to the left was clearly someone genuinely talking about a product and talking about that experience. And that's not to say that, you know, celebrity marketing doesn't work. It's just that, you know, you now have the capacity and the ability to actually tell really great stories, leveraging micro-influencers, not only to their community, but, you know, within your own community as well. So this, you know, these 4 examples right here come from Solely Baby Wraps, where, you know, they're really telling amazing visual stories along with great quotes from their customers. So in all of these cases, in the first 3, they've actually regrammed content, again, from products that they've sent to their customers who have photographed that product in the real world, and in a setting that, again, is authentic and clearly an actual use case. And they have, you know, their customers actually talking about, you know, why they're using the product and sort of that overall story about their child. And then on the right, we see you know, a customer as well using the Solely hashtag and explaining, you know, why they're using this product. So while these aren't celebrities, you can sort of tell that, you know, this isn't a type of photo that a celebrity would typically share, because these are real customers and people who are using this product as a necessity, and it just so happens that it's a product that they love. And so that sort of leads nicely into this idea of letting, you know, others tell your brand story. And the easiest way that you can do that is by enabling one of your fans or a micro-influencer to do an account takeover, to let someone, you know, take over your Instagram account and tell the story of your brand through their own eyes. So the way that you do this is by selecting an influencer with an audience that sort of matches your specific demographic and the community that you're trying to reach. And then once you've selected that influencer, you want to think about, okay, well, how do we give them a really unique and awesome experience, you know, with the brand as the backdrop to that experience or to that offer. And then the influencer actually posts from the brand account. Sometimes this does happen in real time. If it is an influencer who's comfortable doing that and they've done this type of thing before, they're more than welcome to post in real time, and you can actually kind of give them the account logins. Additionally, you can sort of stage the takeover. You can have the influencer, you know, take the photography ahead of time, build the captions, and then actually deliver it to your team to post on, you know, that day or the specific weekend. It really depends on kind of how far along you are with these types of programs. And the value of this type of takeover is that you're reaching a new audience. So this influencer is going to be posting to their account, announcing the takeover, and then additionally, it establishes authenticity and social proof. So instead of having, again, these different models and celebrities and, you know, brand marketers talking about your brand, you have someone who is a peer to your community, right? There's someone that's just like the average normal consumer that has the chance to actually be featured and have their voice heard amongst the brand, which just immediately establishes this sort of social proof that makes your brand more approachable. And in the back of, you know, everyone's mind, they're thinking, wow, maybe I'll have this chance, you know, someday. And then finally, as a brand, you now have all of this new unique content that you're collecting from this influencer's takeover. And so I'm going to go through a quick example of a takeover that I actually worked on with Kimpton Hotels. So they have, I think it's now over 60 hotels across the U.S., and so we're working on a pilot here in Philadelphia where they actually took over their Philadelphia-based Instagram account, again, with the goal of finding a new audience and creating a bunch of new content that they could use across their social channels. So the very first step with this type of takeover is, again, the announcement. So leveraging my personal community before I kind of took over the account for the weekend, I posted to my personal Instagram account, you know, with a very authentic caption that's typically in my voice. So I said, giving this whole staycation thing a try this weekend and taking over the Kimpton account to document it. Give their account a follow as soon as possible as I explore Philly this weekend. So I'm sort of, you know, making it known that I'm taking over the account, which is going to drive followers to Kimpton because they're going to want to see the content throughout the weekend. So this means that, you know, throughout the weekend, I'm going to be posting 3 to 4 photos per day to the Kimpton account. And I'm not going to post those same photos to my personal account because I want to create that sense of exclusivity and give people a reason to follow. And so immediately after doing that post from the Kimpton account, I then share that same photo. So when people go from my account to Kimpton, there's that automatic connection and just recognizing the fact that, okay, Brennan's here to take over this account, and this is the first post, and, you know, looking forward to more of this content. And throughout the weekend, again, I'm sharing my story of how I explore the hotel and how I explore the city, by staying at Kimpton. And it isn't just simply shots of specifically the hotel room. It's really around, what does this stay afford me as a customer? What am I able to do because I'm staying at the Kimpton, and what are the experiences around the hotel? So you can see that this content is unique. It's not strictly about the hotel, and it's content that Kimpton previously, wouldn't have been able to create themselves because, again, they're thinking from the brand marketing side, whereas I'm thinking from the kind of influencer and consumer aspect. And the results were really, really exciting. So from a Friday to Sunday, so just a 3-day period, the account grew their following by 13.3%. And additionally, the engagement saw a really giant spike. So the takeover content generated 40% more likes per post than the standard content that Kimpton was sharing previously. So I drove more followers, and I was able to, again, increase the engagement because I was sharing more lifestyle-oriented content. I think what's most exciting is sort of the idea that this content and the engagement from this content is trending. So post-campaign, the average likes per photo is up by 65%, looking at the pre-campaign numbers. So if you think about it, this achieved a few things. It achieved, it grew a new audience by attracting new followers. But additionally, while I was there, so I did take the 3 to 4 photos per day that I was posting to the Kimpton account. But additionally, within the agreement, I was also asked to take 10 additional photos that Kimpton could use post-campaign. So I'm there already for the weekend. I have my camera. It just makes sense for me to provide them with an additional content that they can use post-campaign, and again, that content is continuing to work. So now on a monthly basis, Kimpton is now scaling this type of campaign in this program and bringing in a new influencer every month to create the same type of content and to kind of continue to grow the account. So for number 3, we want to talk a bit more about specifically product posts. So just like Julia's previous example, how do we get micro-influencers to talk about your product in a way that's authentic and genuine? And I think what's really exciting with the example that I'll go through is that we have very specific numbers and some ROI to show you why kind of micro-influencers work in this type of setting. So you're probably very aware with how these product posts work. This isn't anything new. This has been happening even before Instagram. But the idea is to find brand-related micro-influencers. So people, again, who have an audience that will respond well and react to their post about your product. You're able to send them a free product in exchange for a post. So again, with the micro-influencers, they typically aren't going to charge you because these are people who, they haven't ever promoted a product before, or they just have such a small following that, again, they're not at that point where they need to demand a price. And in a way, they don't yet actually understand or really value or understand the value of their community yet. So I don't want to say that we're taking advantage of them at this point because, again, you're still, as a brand, you're actually doing them a favor by sort of giving them this opportunity to start to build that kind of credibility among their community. Another important thing is to enable them to act freely and creatively, but with some guidelines. So you want to help them with the brand voice. You want to kind of give them some examples of past posts that have performed successfully, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're allowing them to speak freely. The reason that their communities are so highly engaged is because they trust this influencer, so you want to make sure that you're allowing them to speak and to comment in the way that they typically would, or else it'll come across as an advertisement. And the value is somewhat similar to the account takeover. You have new unique content that all of these influencers are creating for your brand. You're reaching an entirely different audience. And then in some cases, you can actually make a direct connection to ROI, which we'll discuss in a second. Cool. So the example that we'll go through is from a brand called Cora. They're a startup based in San Francisco. They just launched nationally. They actually just received placement in Target. I think they're now in 50 different Target locations, which has been really exciting. And this is actually a tampon brand, right? So at first, when I actually do this presentation in person, I always try and get a raise of hands to understand who has heard of Cora, and then actually have people guess at what this product is because the packaging is so beautiful. But it's a monthly subscription where every month you receive the subscription in the mail, and it's in this beautiful packaging. They have a carrying case or a pouch which looks really nice It's actually nicer than my wallet. But in general, this is a beautiful product that will do really, really well on Instagram when being photographed. So their team was tasked with, well, how do we kind of get this product out there? We know that it's going to photograph well, but we don't have a big budget, but we do have a lot of product to actually give away. So what they did is they found 60 different influencers across the U.S. Again, micro-influencers, so people with 1,000 to 50,000 followers, and sent them free product in exchange for a product post. And we'll go through a few different examples, and I'll show you two specifically. So we have one user here, Liz in Lavender, with 6,700 followers, and a second user here, Twisted Tea. So as a brand, and I don't blame you again because this is typically how influencer marketing was perceived. But as a brand, you would look at these two kind of users and their follower account, and maybe shrug your shoulders and think, okay, maybe they have some influence, but is this really worth the investment or really worth the time? But you can see as they're, from the results from their post, and if you want to advance to the next slide, we can see that their engagement was incredible. So the engagement rate here is an engagement rate that I'm sure none of you are seeing with your current campaigns. Liz drove nearly 400 likes, and I'm sure that number has probably spiked over 400 since we tracked and pulled these numbers, and drove 25 comments with her post about the product. And same with Rachel, Twisted Tea, 3,600 followers, generated more than 200 likes and 11 different comments. And so I just want to make it clear here, kind of this to kind of forget this idea that people with a lot of followers aren't going to drive a lot of engagement, because the engagement rate here is pretty spectacular. So if you can scale this across 20, 30, 40, 50 people, you're looking at numbers that are comparable to if you were just working with one or two influencers with 100,000 followers. And what's most exciting is, yes, there were likes, there were impressions, but what's most exciting is the intent that these communities started to show. So we can see in this example all the different comments and how kind of excited and specific people were being about eventually making a purchase. Someone asking where, how can I get these, how much are they? Someone saying, I love this, great product, I would be happy to stand behind. Thanks for spreading the word, I will definitely be subscribing, right? So these are conversations that are happening, which, again, with a celebrity or more of an official blogger, you don't get these types of conversations because they don't feel like they're talking to another human. And so the intent here is really fantastic. And one thing that you didn't probably see in the description is that for each of these posts, the influencer was provided a promo code to include in their captions. So for Liz, the promo code was Liz15, so people were able to get $15 off their first purchase. So this allows us to actually track what purchases are being made and which influencers are driving those purchases, and then additionally it allows the influencer to add value to their community. So not only they're not just bragging about getting a free product, they're saying, hey, I received this awesome free product, and guess what, I'm going to add value back to my community as well and give you some type of discount or opportunity. And the same type of engagement we saw on Twisted Tea's post as well. So this is amazing. Buying mine now. Everyone should be using these. Yes, this is awesome. Such a necessity, right? So these are people who had never heard of Quora before, and just with these two posts, we're seeing 10 plus purchases that are being made just by simply sending these users a free product and letting them speak creatively and freely about how they actually would use this product and show a real endorsement. And then I think the third aspect of this campaign, which has been really exciting, is that all of the content that the influencers have created, all these images are now being used across Quora's channel. You can see these three posts, again, from influencers that Quora is now leveraging on the Instagram account to really build out their brand story and in a way to show authentic content versus kind of just the kind of straight standard product photography. And all this is performed really well, and so we'll jump to the next slide to go over some of the stats. So from this campaign, again, from their launch, they grew about 200% increase in total followers. So this was about a month-long campaign. And then I mentioned the content. So 4 of Quora's top 5 Instagram posts are images that were generated by influencers for this campaign. So think about the money that you're investing in on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis on, high-end product photography. What we're finding on Instagram is that, that's not the content that's going to actually drive the most engagement. Of course, you do need that content for advertising, for e-commerce, and even for Instagram, but this bucket of content that's being created by influencers and fans, that's the content that's going to drive the most engagement. And all of that content was basically given to Quora for free, right? Just simply in return for, a product post. And then additionally, they saw 200% return on investment. So, when thinking about the amount of product that they actually distributed, the consulting fee for this type of campaign, they still saw a massive ROI, and they were able to track that because of the discount code that the influencers were using in their posts. And because we have that discount code, you can actually start to look at the data in some interesting ways. And what we did is we actually looked at, well, who actually drove sales during this campaign, and were there any trends? And we found that 90% of sales in this campaign came from users in the 1,000 to 10,000 follower range, and 10% of sales came from users in the 10,000 to 50,000 follower range, right? So this is probably the complete opposite of what we initially expected going into this campaign. And this has really sort of cemented the idea that, micro-influencers are extremely valuable, and the voice that they have is a voice that consumers are really, really starting to trust. For users that are in that 1,000 to 10,000 follower range, they may have never, this may be the first time that they're posting about a product. And so if you think about it, if you're following one of your friends or, maybe a blogger who is in this range, and you see them post about a product, it feels super authentic because they don't often do so. Whereas when you start going past that 10,000 number, the amount of products that these bloggers are posting on a daily or weekly basis, it sort of becomes a bit diluted, and you sort of expect it. So that 1,000 to 10,000 range, we're seeing a lot of engagement and a lot of revenue coming from that group, and it's one that we encourage you all to start investing in, and be happy to answer more questions about how to find those people and how to manage those people at the end of the webinar.
Great, thank you, Brendan. So we're going to pass it off now to Emily, who's going to jump in and talk about how Farfetch uses influencers and micro-influencers. And to reiterate Brendan's point, I would encourage you all to keep submitting these questions. We're going to definitely get to them at the end of the webinar, so keep them coming.
Thanks. Hi guys. As everyone knows, I'm Emily from Farfetch. So I look after the global online comms, and included in this is all of our influencer network that we have globally. So I kind of wanted to just touch base more on how, from a brand side, we not only work with influencers, but then how we also use that content after the day, kind of taking more value from it, and sharing like a better perspective on how we can build on it, and also engage not only your customer base that exists audience. So recently we just launched our new brand campaign called The One. The premise of this campaign was to communicate that Farfetch lets you access and explore the world's greatest selection of luxury from our global curators of boutiques and brands. On Farfetch itself, we have over 100,000 products, and so we wanted to showcase this in a way that was engaging yet resonated with the target audience. So to bring this campaign to life on social media, we asked not only our community, but also a selection of curators or social ambassadors, influencers, to share the one item that they needed this autumn-winter. So we pulled all of these posts from Instagram into a fan reel that was hosted on the website itself, where customers can come and get inspired by our curators, and also the social community, and then shop their looks directly on Farfetch. This was actually built by Curalate themselves, and it was just an amazing addition to the campaign that we really think brings a very rich, immersive experience for users that isn't just sell, 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 which we find a lot of content can be. So it's a real place to come and get inspired. They can then discover and really explore kind of the product categories and selection that we have on site. We had an amazing response so far from our audience from this campaign. To date, we saw over 400,000 engagements on the hashtag. Our conversion rate has increased so dramatically from Instagram, and also the traffic to site that we have seen has increased over 60% via our link in bio. Not only that, also the reach of the community. We've reached around 25 million people globally since the launch, and it's only been running for 5 weeks so far. So you can really see that there's been a drastic uplift. And not only that, we've also seen the organic activity around the hashtag with users sharing their own content, so that they can also be celebrated within this hub has increased so far. And we just think this is a super valuable thing, because basically at the moment we're building a 360 relationship. Not only are we celebrating users, but we're also gaining really rich native content that we can repurpose on our website. So if we get to the next slide. So from this is a little snapshot that you can see from our hub, where you can see the Instagram content that we have, which we've then paired up with products from our site. Everything here is pulled in dynamically from a feed, and it allows the user to click through and can then explore that product and then purchase in a really seamless, very engaging manner. We also think that this kind of increases the shoppability because it's of the ease of purchase for customers. As we all know that, especially with e-com at the moment, these users, they don't have much time. So for us, it's really been a way of engaging, keeping them on site and converting them to that purchase very quickly, but also at the same time really inspiring people. It's that inspiration, discovery, kind of purchase flow that we feel that not only are we converting people to fans and customers, but also keeping them there in this community rather than, again, like what I just said, selling every single time. So yeah, we definitely think it's a super valuable way for us to build these long-term relationships, which I think is a real key thing for a brand, rather than working with multiple influencers and kind of curators all of the time. It's about building those really long-lasting, kind of very valuable, authentic relationships that people really believe, and then building on this content that's being produced, because the other thing is these content curators are providing us with a source of content that we can then reuse across departments, not only marketing channels, but all in a variety of ways that probably as a brand ourselves, we would spend absolutely ages from developing the idea, executing it, and then delivering it on each channel. It really ties it in a much more easier, very seamless, but then we're getting a really high quality piece of content at the end of it. So another really amazing thing that we've kind of seen from getting this influencer content is also how we're using this across departments. And one thing that we're really trying to do is leverage this content across teams and also channels. We've definitely seen that there's a real value in this content at different stages of the marketing funnel. And we definitely find that from our SEO team who are working with influencers for links, CRM teams who are repurposing Instagram UGC from real life product that has been purchased from the site, PR with event coverage, the performance marketing team across social are then using our own influencer content on Facebook to retarget users who have already seen certain brands. So we're kind of trying to use it in a lot more cleverer ways that for us to kind of a new audience or an existing audience appears really native on that channel. It's also quite cost effective for us because, as I said, we're getting this amazing rich content from a really trusted source that we can then use across multiple channels. So instead of our CRM team and then our SEO team and then the social team all going out and kind of acquiring their own content, we're getting it from one trusted source that we can then repurpose in multiple ways. We also really find that with this influencer content, it kind of has a tendency sometimes to, you build up to these campaigns and from the live date and when it's posted, it almost dies. And that's one thing we really don't want to see. We want this content to kind of live on forever. It's so valuable because these influencers, they have all the freedom in the world when they work with Farfetch to kind of communicate our brand message to an audience in a way that really resonates with them. And it also appears more authentic on the channels that we're using it, instead of us using just a flat product from the site, which for a user is not engaging whatsoever. They want to see something that they want to see on that channel, for example. So this is something that we really believe is appealing when targeting these new customers, and kind of acquiring them on social, but then driving them through that marketing funnel onto the site and then to purchase. It's a super valuable, again, that 360 kind of idea of how you can bring those customers in at each stage. Another then the thing that I guess ties into all of this and how we make this work is the influencer discovery element. So this is something that we work very closely with Curalate, and we use all the time just to really kind of ease the process of actually sourcing these influencers. Because as we all know, time is of the essence. The social space is moving so quickly that all brands have to be reactive. You have to be able to source that influencer, ensure that they've got the right audience, ensure that they've got the engagement metrics that you want, collaborate, get them the brief, and then execute that content in a really quick, responsive time and manner in order to resonate with that customer. So one thing that we found really, really useful is the explore function that we have come across on Curalate, as you can see here. So the way that this works, you can either search through influencer, through hashtag, through keyword, and then you can really drill down into the nitty-gritty of location, age, the user activity, their online presence, and for us it's just a super amazing ease of our time and resource within our company, just to ensure that we're getting the right influencers and you're speaking to the right audience, because obviously from a brand it's great that we're getting this amazing content that's been curated by these really influential people, but we just want to also make sure that we're being able to do it in a timely manner and get it back out as soon as we've done it. So this is definitely something that has really helped us, and also forming those relationships with influencers as well. We don't just want this to be a one-time thing that we're just finding different people that work for each campaign. We really want to build those long-term relationships and turn these influencers into what we at Farfetch call our social ambassadors. So it's definitely, something that we really found has helped us out a lot, just really sourcing the top quality content and, as I say, getting it out in a timely manner. So that's probably my bits.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Great. So what we've kind of talked about here, to kind of sum up what Brendan and Emily have talked about, I think it's clear that with the right strategy, influencer relationships can grow, and so can your audience. And so, as brands kind of look towards the future, so all these new and kind of exciting ways to reach customers at different points on their buyer journey, we can definitely use influencers as a great way to kind of foster these relationships that get the word out about your brand in a different way, and really create the word of mouth communication that's going to be crucial to growing your brand in these kind of areas. So let's move on to your questions. We are really excited, got a number of great ones. So Brendan and Emily are going to kind of jump in and give their perspectives on some of these. So let's just start it off with, one thing that I think I was thinking about as we were going through all of this is, if I'm a brand, how do I start thinking about what qualities I want out of an influencer? What are the things that most important? So I guess my first question to you, Brendan and Emily, is what should the team consider when they're creating a list of values that they want to find in a micro-influencer?
Sure.
Emily, I'd love for you to start off on that one. Awesome. Go ahead.
So for us, we always take a good look at whoever we are using. So we definitely look at the campaign itself and the objective that we really want to work towards. So whether or not that's selling a product, supporting the launch of a new collection, blah, 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 that kind of thing. We always want to make sure that it's tailored to that specific thing. So then once we found the correct influencer that we think has that amazing audience, so their content fits, we definitely look more. For us, following really isn't anything that we go by. We really find that the really big girls, guys, that especially in the fashion set, are really now kind of just great because they've got that name. I don't necessarily think for us as a brand are as interesting as these micros. So we really look at kind of how engaged that audience is. the comments that they're getting and how they're interacting with that audience is really, really important to us, and just ensuring that they're keeping that community. And like I said, once they've posted, that content isn't falling flat and they're re-engaging those fans after the time. So that's definitely something that we look at beforehand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And just to add to that as well, I mean, yeah, I think you were just kind of speaking on the engagement rate and then sort of the overall aesthetic, right? By taking a quick scroll through the influencer or the user's feed, you can sort of get a sense for, what type of content are they typically sharing, and is this content that we think we'll be able to, eventually use on our channels. And then also while scrolling through the feed, how many other brands are they working with?
Yeah.
I think that we've seen that some people that are working with too many brands, it just sort of starts to again dilute the message, and when you talk about a brand, it's just less impactful. So making sure that they aren't working with too many brands and brands that frankly may be competitors.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then Brendan, so to kind of flip the script, what makes a partnership appealing to a micro-influencer? So what are the kinds of things that are appealing to you when you're sort of considering helping out a brand?
Yeah, so I think the thing that always works, and even though I know that some of the times brands are really strategic when reaching out, but like the first thing that works is flattery. Like I love when a brand, actually says, hey, we love your photography, and like they actually, explain why they love some of the content and how they think that it ties back to their brand values, right? For a large brand to contact you and say they appreciate your work and that they think it matches with their brand, that's an amazing ego boost and automatically puts you a step ahead.
Yeah, so rather than that canned, hey, can we share this, or can you work with us, to actually take the time to get to know a micro-influencer and talk about how that aesthetic will fit.
Right. I want it to be, more of a partnership, and then additionally, something unique, something that maybe a brand typically isn't offering, right? That may be an exclusive look at a new product that no one else has seen yet. Maybe it's checking out a retail store earlier in the day and seeing a new line before it's released to everybody else. Maybe it's a package or, a getaway that, again, is sort of exclusive and curated. So overall, like, I'm happy to work with brands that are simply sending just a product, but I'm much more likely to engage and work with a brand if they're creating an experience or creating some type of curation around the campaign and it feels unique, and that it's something that not everyone else is going to be able to participate in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Emily, does your team kind of get together ahead of time to think about kind of ways that you reach out to micro-influencers? Do you guys have a process around that?
Sure. I think from our side of things, we're very kind of casual about the way that we handle things here. All of us, I love how you were just talking as well, like flattery will get me anywhere. We, as a team, there's 7 girls, and for us, we are literally spending our days on Instagram being like, oh my God, have you seen this person? Have you seen this person? So for us, it's really about that kind of personal touch as well, because we actually, even though we're coming from a brand, we as people absolutely love and respect the work that these influencers are doing. So we're pretty casual about the way that we do it. Obviously, now with it's generally just either on Instagram via kind of messaging. I know obviously there's quite a few micro influencer platforms and agencies out there that are making it a lot easier. But I still think that, yeah, if you're just kind of like supernatural, cool, casual, friendly, just dropping an email that has never returned any bad comments from me. People are, like you say, as soon as I can normally say, hey, love to work with you, I get great response back, like, hey, love your brand, or sure, what are you thinking, that kind of thing. I think it's pretty chilled and just happens, really.
Yeah, that's great. We had another question from someone about if you've ever gotten a negative reaction, and I think you really hit the nail on the head there, which is, if you're authentic, they're authentic. I think it's a human interaction, and the more kind of natural it can be, the better the result. And then you can, yeah, that's great.
And we're all here at the end of the day to do a job, aren't we? So I think we're helping each other in a way.
Exactly.
And we're super respectful of kind of what those influencers want to do and how they want to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So another question is, so I think like what scares away some brands or gives them apprehension about engaging in these kind of relationships is this idea that content will come across as salesy, or if that if there is any indication that something's sponsored or paid for, it comes across as disingenuous. So what are some ways that, and kind of maybe ways of putting the content out there, or ways of promoting these relationships that ensure that it comes across as a little bit more of a part of the aesthetic versus a sudden posting that appears sponsored?
I definitely feel from my side of things, it's these long-term relationships that you need to build, because I definitely agree. I think if you're seeing influencers posting from multiple brands across, we all know, even like when I'm on my Instagram feed, you can, even if you're not in the industry, you can spot it. So you just have to be, careful in it. I really think it matters about who you're working with, and the influencers need to pick the right brands, and then the brands need to pick the right people to work with.
Okay, I think it seems that
of what we call our social ambassadors, not really influencers, that we go to across multiple times in the year to do either a big brand campaign, to do a push for Thanksgiving, something like that. But we always try and build.
That's part of the challenge of, because they have a very specific voice. So as soon as that voice is tweaked even just a little bit, it's very clear, and you're just not going to see the impact. So if you are doing an influencer campaign, just remember that the reason you're paying or providing this influencer with free product is because you're valuing their creativity and their audience. So to a certain extent, let them run free with it and let them ultimately make the decision about how the content will look and feel.
Yeah, and I think that's really key, is allowing that freedom. It's definitely something that we found to benefit us here, is because obviously our brand model is, not many people know that we're built on boutiques and brands rather than actually owning all of the product ourselves. So for us, it's a really interesting thing to see how these influencers take our kind of brand and they then communicate this to their audience. And I think that's super valuable for us, to not really set that many restrictions on what or how they do this. I don't care if it's a flat lay, whether it's a little video on stories, or whether they're taking it to Vine, like where that content comes from and what it looks like. I'm all for the kind of diversity of it. And it's just super interesting to see how they tell that brand story in their way. And I don't think that you can get much better than that, really.
Yeah, I agree, Emily. And that sort of makes me think about what you were talking about with the repurposing that influencer content on your site in a shoppable gallery, which allows you to kind of show those images in a little bit more of a creative way, and then again expand the kind of lifespan of it. And so I'm curious, when you went ahead doing that, did you feel like there were any kind of challenges to incorporating those influencer images into the rest of your kind of e-com offerings, or do you feel like it was sort of a seamless process with the right influencers?
Sure. So to be honest, it has been an absolute dream so far. It's really, really turned out for the best. I think just having the hub there, I think it actually almost exceeded expectations in the uplift that we got organically from getting people to then start doing their own content. So people that were shopping off the site that were normally hashtagging Farfetch, for example, were seeing our content and doing their own, that we were then able to just reuse straight away and make shoppable. So yeah, I think it's been quite a big learning curve for us, just in the sense of like getting all these influencers and making sure that everything's happening at the right time and ensuring that they're all posting at the same time so that we can tag and stuff. But no, I definitely think it's been super great for us at the moment anyway.
That's great. And then we've got a question from Henry that I think is really interesting, and he's asking about a lot of what we've been talking about is sort of fashion and Instagram, and when it comes to kind of video content. So these sorts of vertical video is, as we know, taking off big time with Instagram stories, Snapchat, and so forth. So how can we use micro-influencers when it comes to vertical video?
Yeah, and I can take this initially, Emily. So I think what's really exciting about vertical video is that the quality doesn't necessarily have to be there, right? So think about when you're watching something on Snapchat or if you're watching something on an Instagram story. if you see something that comes across as overproduced, it automatically feels like an advertisement. And so when you think about having micro-influencers create video, vertical content for you, it's actually not as much of an investment as video used to be. And so because the expectation from the consumer is that it's going to be this sort of, front-facing, fun, authentic experience, there doesn't have to be a ton of production or investment that needs to be made. And so I think knowing that the quality doesn't necessarily have to be this, overproduced content, it's then about the experience. So how do you give someone an experience or an environment or a product that, gives them the opportunity to capture a unique story? And again, whether that's taking them behind the scenes or sending them to or sending them with a product to an experience that, again, is going to help them generate that content. So how do you basically empower them with a way to create fun content that at the end of the day is going to make their followers get really excited for them and wonder, wow, how did he get access to that, and seek more information.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like as somebody who uses Snapchat and Instagram stories a lot, I really enjoy those sort of behind the scenes or kind of less curated aspects of vertical video, which is sort of what makes it fun. And I think you see brands using sort of like Facebook Live and stuff like that, and it's a great way to kind of get that sort of fun lifestyle content that sometimes is evaded by super styled shoots and whatnot.
Yeah, and then how do you actually take the experience of vertical video and start to bring that into other channels? So, these consumers are now dominated, or their time is dominated by, Snapchat and Instagram, and so they're learning all these behaviors around how to interact with content because Snapchat and Instagram are forcing them to interact in that way. So how can brands start to actually bring that same type of experience onto their own channels? So now that someone's used to swiping to shift through content and going back and forth, can you actually bring that into the e-commerce experience? So now when someone is viewing video on your site and swiping left and right, can they then buy right away as opposed to having to leave Instagram or leave Snapchat to find that product? So I think we're at the very early stages of that, and Curalate actually has a new product called Tilt, which is enabling brands to do that, and we have a few beta brands that are leveraging it right now. But in general, how do we take these experiences and these nuances that Snapchat and Instagram are forcing users to kind of learn? How do you bring that on site to make the e-commerce experience even better?
Yeah, I've actually tested out Tilt, and it's really, really good for anyone. You should have a look at it. I saw it the other day, and I definitely think you're right. I think it'll get even easier to shop from social.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about Tilt, like when we talk about this idea of repurposing content in a creative way that makes the partnership last, that kind of lasting relationship being the key, is that Tilt really allows, it's only on mobile, and it really allows you to kind of take action on those quick clips that otherwise are just for, visual consumption. So it's a great option for that. And then to pivot a little bit back to what we were talking about earlier, Brendan, when you were speaking about takeovers, this sort of vertical video chat got me thinking about takeovers and how that's often a way that brands will work with vertical video as well. But what are some sort of do's and don'ts of takeovers? I know you mentioned that it's important to sort of set guidelines and be clear about what you're looking for. So how do you sort of manage that relationship? How do you make sure it's really getting you the best content?
Yeah, so I think we've talked a lot about like creative freedom, which is super important, but I will say that with takeovers, there definitely needs to be a bit more of a structure in place. And when I say structure, it's more about guidance. How many posts should the user be posting per day? Are there different sorts of kind of, for instance, with Kimpton, before every takeover, we actually provide the influencer with a list of kind of places to explore nearby, so we could sort of guide them into that experience. So there's definitely some more preparation that's needed. I will say that we're open at this point for this with Kimpton to actually give the account over to the user, right? So we create them a new password and we allow them to log in. But if you are a larger brand with a larger following, I definitely would recommend sort of staging the takeover. So having the influencer create the content, generate the captions for you, and have you post it as if it's happening in real time, just because there are a lot of potential issues with them, whether it's losing the password or somehow taking control of the account and posting something that maybe isn't favorable or something that isn't the correct brand voice. So overall, we haven't seen anything necessarily bad happen, but in general, the account takeover definitely requires a bit more planning than simply the sponsored or promoted posts.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to kind of finish up, one more question is thinking ahead to the future, and Emily, this may apply to a little bit about what you're thinking about with Farfetch. How do you see influencers kind of continuing to play a role in your strategy and on social and beyond?
I think that they're only going to get more and more valuable and important for us as a brand. I think from the content side of things, the amount that they can produce and the quality and also the diversity, like I said, not only with just having like static imagery and then also all of this live experience for us as a global brand to ensure that we're engaging our audience in all of these different locations. It's only going to be via influencers, I believe, at times. So I think it's just going to be one of those ones that grows and grows, and it will never disappear. And just the way that these influencers are getting even better, their audiences are getting even better at recognizing and realizing what they're up to and the content that they're producing. So I think everyone's just going to get even better, and it's going to become even more necessary for a brand. And yeah, I just think for us, like, we benefit from it in a content point of view and then that audience reach. So I think it's just going to become an even bigger a need for it. Yeah, I believe anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's pretty exciting to see how it's grown already. I mean, this is a relatively new in some ways thing, and so it's exciting to see it going from this high level to this micro and seeing it from there. So thank you so much, Brendan and Emily, for joining us. I'm going to hand it back to the drum, and we really appreciate everybody joining in.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you so much to everybody for listening in. If you would like to listen back to a recording of the webinar, we will email you a link to that. And also do subscribe to our emailing list for future webinars. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great afternoon.